Next up, we have Beheeyem. This Generation 5 Psychic type has a design packed with extraterrestrial connections. It resembles a gray alien, and its pre-evolution LGM's Pokedex entry suggests some sort of Area 51 style alien conspiracy origin. Its design also evokes the hat and trench coat characteristic of secretive agents in connection with such alien conspiracy. Even its name is a corruption of the abbreviation BEM, which stands for Bug-Eyed Monster, which is an old expression referring to extraterrestrials. Today, we're going to examine what Beheeyem's cosmic intentions for the competitive scene were, and if it succeeded in pulling them off. And so, we ask, how good was Beheeyem actually? And in this video, we'll be going over these competitive formats. With a whopping base 125 special attack stat, which provides a 30% power boost if the Pokemon attacks second in a turn or on the switch, Beheeyem naturally packs quite a punch before the prospect of providing it with extra boosts from Choice Specs or Nasty Plot could even be considered. Its low speed, which is usually a burden, actually worked in its favor with Analytic. Alternatively, Beheeyem could flip the dimensions with Trick Room for a late game sweep. Not needing to focus on speed also allowed it to invest in its solid natural bulk. At a surface level, Beheeyem was not dissimilar to Reuniclus, but sadly, there was a reason Reun was a dominant OU force and why Beheeyem was anything but. Beheeyem was simply not bulky or resilient enough to get to use its immense power. Its bulk was good, but more in the sense that it could take one of nearly any hit, not in the sense that it could take multiple hits, even with recover, an issue severely compounded by its low speed. The power level in NU was low enough to where it could overcome this hindrance, and after tumbling through the tiering rung, Beheeyem finally established a niche for itself there. It was decent as it was potentially quite threatening but also significantly flawed. On one hand, nothing safely switched into it. Its Choice Spec set demolished pretty much the entire tier. Bulky teams in particular absolutely hated facing Beheeyem, as they also struggled to hurt it much. On the other hand, Beheeyem struggled to find more than one opportunity a game against fast-paced, hard-hitting offensive teams, and it was brutally vulnerable to pursuit trapping from the popular Skunk Tank. This is not necessarily a bad trade-off to make in and of itself, and there are plenty of Pokemon that destroy bulky teams at the expense of offensive matchups. However, the problem for Beheeyem was that in NU, there was not always a need to choose a Pokemon that specialized in destroying defense, because there were plenty of Pokemon that did that while also having strong matchups against offensive teams. It was basically overkill that opened up unnecessary flaws. This isn't to say Beheeyem didn't have its place, because it certainly did. It just had a tougher time fitting into teams than the metagame's staples. Beheeyem could also act as a late game offensive killer with its Trick Room set, but that had to be kept in prime condition until late game, and most teams didn't care for playing with 5 Pokemon for most of the battle, especially with Team Preview. So overall, Beheeyem had a flawed but legitimate place in its debut generation of NU. Massive power creep, including a buff knockoff, meant Beheeyem wasn't going to stand a chance in Generation 6's NU. Fortunately, there was a new lowest tier called PU, and there, Beheeyem was killer. The tier was rife with low base stat totals, meaning Beheeyem effortlessly shredded most Pokemon and had the bulk to take their hits well too. Its Choice Spec set quickly established itself as a vicious wall breaker. However, ferocious though it was, its lack of resilience hindered it from going too crazy. But then bulky Nasty Plot variants emerged, and Beheeyem truly became elite. With recover and defensive investment, it perfectly took advantage of the tier's low power level, shrugging hits off left and right while boosting up and bursting through would-be checks like Vullaby and Grumpig. It was so bulky and so strong that it was nearly impossible to check without losing at least one Pokemon. Even knockoff spamming dark types like Pawniard and Krokorok would be stifled by its Cobra Berry, even after it was used up, since then knockoff's power would be weakened. Beheeyem's emphasis on defensive investment didn't exactly come at the cost of immediate power against offensive Pokemon either. It was so naturally strong, especially with the analytic boost it pretty much always had, that it was still knocking the stuffing out of anything without a resistance or serious bulk investment. One would call this Beheeyem the Hannah Montana variant because it really had the best of both worlds. It was impossible to wall defensively, and it had use against offensive teams. This emphasis on bulk didn't just mean Beheeyem could threaten offensive teams more efficiently either. It also allowed Beheeyem to provide even more utility to its team by actually contributing defensively, which made for a much well-rounded Pokemon and therefore team as a whole. It was especially excellent at stopping Mr. Mime, while its team appreciated the help it provided against the likes of Monferno and Combusken as well. And the best part of all was that Reuniclus's pre-evolution Duocean was also in PU, and it was quite good. But it couldn't match the sheer excellence of Beheeyem, and so vengeance was Beheeyem's, as it came to reign over ORAS PU as one of the tier's very best, most defining Pokemon. Sadly, Generation 7's power creep transformed PU into a high-powered tier unrecognizable from its ORAS counterpart. In this stronger, more faster-paced metagame, Beheeyem could not establish a niche. It was significantly outclassed by other psychic types, namely Alolan Raichu, who was far more immediately effective thanks to its blazing speed and powerful secondary electric stab, which meant it could do things like beat Oricorio Sensu and not be walled by Sableye. Access to Focus Blast meant Ferroseed wouldn't be stopping it either. These were all problems that crippled Beheeyem. It struggled to achieve much of anything, but Alolan Raichu was quite frail, you wonder. So what about Beheeyem's bulk? Well, if it was a bulky psychic type you wanted, Musharna would get the job done far more reliably. It was far tankier, still quite strong, and had an incredible move pool that made it one of PU's very best Pokemon. Being outclassed by not one but two of the tier's best Pokemon is pretty much a death sentence in all but the rarest of cases, and Beheeyem was no exception. Some players tried to make it work, but it was quickly apparent that it just was not worth the effort, and as a result, Beheeyem dropped to untiered. Beheeyem settled into the earliest stages of Generation 8 PU with an incredible new move in tow, Teleport, which had been buffed into a negative priority switch move, allowing it to get its teammates in with ease. This gave it even more depth to its game. With a bulky Cobra Berry set, Beheeyem could hit hard, act as a valuable defensive stopgap, and provide its teammates with opportunities, all at the same time. Of course, if Beheeyem wanted, it could run choice specs. It loved that Pursuit had been removed from the game, meaning that locking into a stab psychic was no longer a death sentence for it. It could now wreak all the destruction it wanted, and it could still fit Teleport onto the set as a risk-free option in case it didn't feel like predicting the opponent's switch-in. As such, Beheeyem quickly established itself as one of the best, most important Pokemon in PU. Some players even wanted it banned. That didn't gain too much traction, but it did express the sentiment at times. Beheeyem did feel ridiculous to prepare for, as many players resorted to not fully evolved Dark types to not get completely blown away by Psychic. The Isle of Arbor came around and Beheeyem began running Future Sight, which was an excellent offensive weapon that paired perfectly with Teleport and made for some devastating offensive combinations in conjunction with other threats like Choice Band Thwackey, effortlessly putting the opponent in situations where they simply could not avoid losing a Pokemon. Switching into two powerful attacks at the same time was just insane. Beheeyem continued to favor its old bulky Cobra Berry set, just without the Cobra Berry this time, or any item for that matter, as going itemless allowed it to thwart the Poltergeist spam that was now everywhere. This made it much more difficult to deal with for many teams. Beheeyem was a perfect balance of defensive pivoting against Pokemon like Galarian Mr. Mime and offensive carnage of its own, perfectly setting up teammates like Thievul, Raboots, and Throh. Sometimes players assume Beheeyem wouldn't hit too hard, relatively anyway, since its standard teleport pivot set didn't run special attack investment or any boosting moves or item, and Beheeyem was all too happy to punish that assumption by swapping out teleport for Nasty Plot, proceeding to rip apart bulky Pokemon that thought they could sit on it, and that was to say nothing of the Choice Specs variant. Beheeyem was absolutely excellent. It fit on all sorts of teams and was a massively consistent in-game performer, especially once Kling Klang was banned. Unfortunately, this came to an end with the Crown Tundra. The expansion of the Pokedex introduced enormous power creep that Beheeyem could not keep up with. With the likes of Charizard, Scrafty, Gigalith, and Aggron roaming around, PU became much stronger, and this extended to the new psychic types too. Espeon, Galarian Articuno, Mesprit, Uxie, Gallade, and more, none of which Beheeyem could compete with. As such, Beheeyem dropped to untiered, where it remains today. And it was a shame because it had such an excellent generation beforehand, but it serves as an excellent example that a Pokemon's tiering status does not necessarily tell the whole story. But all in all, Generation 8 has been a success for Beheeyem, and perhaps the most successful Pokemon that wound up untiered in the same generation has ever been. And that's it. So how good was Beheeyem actually? Well, it started as a decent to average lower tier Pokemon in its debut generation, but quickly became elite with Generation 6's addition of PU, helping to define the tier. It dropped to untiered in the severely power-crept Generation 7 rendition of the tier, but returned with a vengeance in Sword and Shield. And until the Crown Tundra, it was one of the best Pokemon in the tier once again. Sadly, it's since returned to untiered and doesn't look to have much chance to return, but it's already left its mark. So overall, Beheeyem has had an interesting, layered competitive history. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Beheeyem? How would you buff it to make it go maybe a few tiers above? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. and follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.